Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. This is the Voices of Healing podcast, and I'm your host, Tina Clark. Today, I have a wonderful guest with me. We actually know each other. We're both from the Charleston area, and she is willing to come on and talk about her journey to sobriety. Thank you for coming and being on the show, Denise.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Sobriety is one of my favorite topics. It has helped me tremendously in my life. For the most, the biggest impact it's had on me is to finally start kind of living fully. So, all growing up, I lived in a survival mode where, I was raised by a single mom. She did not have time to deal with me at all. She really didn't even have time to process her own emotions. And so it was very much just, you didn't have time to stop and feel anything. It was like, I'd get in trouble while we just go to school. She just has to go to work. And I lived like that my entire life, just having to bottle things up, push it down, and keep it moving. And what that does is all those unprocessed emotions, they get stuck inside your unconscious and stuck inside of your body, and you don't even realize it. And so that is kind of what happened to me. So I would unconsciously have something happen to me. And then instead of dealing with it, I would just reach for a bottle of wine and just numb it, because that was my survival mode. That was my method. Just pour wine on top of it and it's fine. And just get up and keep going the next day. So I did that for years. I would drink a bottle of wine every single night after work. Had to calm my stress. If I got in a fight with my sister or anybody else, drink and calm down. It also became a tool that I used to help me to open up in a group of friends. You go out, you have a little bit of alcohol, and all of a sudden I can talk freely. I'm feeling a lot lighter. So that was my tool to kind of connect with people, or at least that's what I thought. So that's what I did. I would drink a lot on the weekends. And then before I knew it, I had become addicted. It certainly, obviously, wasn't an intention, but I would notice that I'd be like, okay, I'm not drinking tonight because I have a really big day at work tomorrow, and I know I'll be hungover. Well, when the evening came, I would be drinking. So it was like this unconscious desire that I could no longer control. And so then I was like, okay, now what? Now it feels like it's totally out of my control. And I'm holding my life together. I'm still a great mom. I was volunteering. I was maintaining my job, always getting promotions, always doing really well. My life wasn't falling apart. It was nothing like that. But I realized that I could no longer control when to not drink. And I was also on antidepressants. I was still all the way up in through adulthood. I'm just suppressing everything. And then I was about 36 years old and I got a divorce. And I decided that now I'm going to start feeling my emotions. A big reason why I got divorced is because my husband and I wouldn't communicate. We would stuff everything down. We'd throw everything under the rug and say we'd deal with it later, and we never did. And we lived like that for 15 years. And what that does is it causes separation instead of connection. And I learned from that. I didn't want that to happen anymore. So I knew I had to give up antidepressants, and I knew I had to give up alcohol, but I had no idea how. And then I read this book called The Power of Now, and it spoke about becoming present and meditation. And it really hit me because to me, it was hope. It was a book of hope, like, okay, there's more to life than this. There's more than just stuffing it all down and numbing it and keeping it moving. I would meditate and I felt my body, like I felt these tingling sensations. I felt calm. I felt at peace, and it became my escape. So now, instead of just using alcohol as my escape, now I had meditation. And so then, on top of the meditation, I was going through a really hard time in my life. And I noticed that when I went to the gym, it was like an hour of peace when nobody was contacting me. I was by myself with my own thoughts. I was sweating it all out. I had endorphins and I felt great after. And so now there's another escape. Now there's another way of feeling good, of dealing with my emotions. And so going to the gym became another tool. On top of that, I started journaling. And I realized that, if I could just write everything out, write out all my stresses, everything that was bothering me, it felt very cleansing. And so now there's another tool that I had to go to instead of reaching for alcohol. But the biggest thing, the most impactful thing that happened was I read this book called This Naked Mind by Annie Grace. And in that book, she basically rewired my unconscious desire for alcohol. So I stopped craving alcohol altogether. I didn't desire it at all. And that was crazy. I felt almost hypnotized because I could not believe it. I would look at a bottle of wine, which was my saving grace, elixir of life for like 10, 15 years. And I was like, oh, it's disgusting. I would have dreams and nightmares where I had drank, and I'm like, I never want to do that again. And the reason it worked is because you have your conscious mind and then your unconscious mind. So my conscious mind would say, if you drink, you are going to embarrass yourself. You are going to wake up tomorrow and you're going to feel like trash. And you don't want to do that. So just don't drink. Easy enough, right? But our unconscious desires, my unconscious mind still believed that the alcohol was going to allow me to have fun, take away my stress, help me relax, and all these things. And your unconscious mind is actually what makes your decisions for you. Like, I think like a millisecond or something before your conscious mind does. So that book rewired my unconscious mind so that I could just stop craving it altogether. And then after that, I had to deal with 37 years of bottling everything up. And that's a whole other journey in itself.
Wow. So I love some of the methods that you use. They often say that if you have a habit that you need to replace it with something else.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like you replaced drinking with meditation and exercise and journaling.
Mm-hmm.
And that journaling is something I recommend to a lot of my clients who have anxiety.
Oh yeah.
There's a transformation that happens when you write things down and you get it out of your head. So writing it down gets it out of your head, circling out of your head, and then you stop thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
But can we go a little bit more into how you were able to rewind your unconscious desire using the methods in the book, The Naked Mind?
Sure. So in that book, she takes 15 lies that alcohol tells us, and she breaks it all down and explains why those lies are lies and they're not true at all. So I'll just tell you a few of my favorite ones, I guess, the ones that really, really hit home to me. One was the relaxation part. I worked really hard. I would get up at 3:30 in the morning. I was going to college, do my homework, get the kids off to daycare. I'd work, 8 to 10 hours a day, get home, cook, clean, pop, so I was constantly busy. And so my wine, I would sit down and have my wine. I was like, I can finally relax, take everything out of my head. And so it was kind of relaxation, take away my stress. But when you think about it, did it really? And it didn't really, because the way that alcohol works is you take that first glass of wine and your dopamine does spike. And yes, you do get that euphoric feeling. But right after that, now it drops and you're lower than when you even started. So now you got to drink even more to try to get that euphoric feeling again, but it's never going to reach the peak of the first time. And so without even realizing, I'm getting even more depressed and more stressed as the night goes on, the more wine I drink. And then the next day is not relaxing when I'm waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I've got dry mouth and I'm so anxious, like, oh my gosh, did my kids see me? Did I say something awful to my husband? Did I text something? Did I post something super embarrassing on Facebook? My heart's pounding. I feel so bad. My head hurts. That is not relaxing at all. And then the next day, when I'm trying to work, now my cortisol is spiked. And so every little thing that's going on in my day that might be a level 4 stress is now at a level 7 stress, because now the cortisol is at play. And so then what do I want to do? Now I want to go home and relax and unwind and de-stress with wine. It's just this crazy cycle. And so in the book, she just outlines those types of things. And so once my unconscious was on board with that, now my conscious mind and my unconscious mind, they're aligned with each other, and there's no more internal conflict. Instead of fighting with myself all day long, should I drink? Maybe I shouldn't get that bottle of wine. But I really, I'm so ashamed of myself. I had none of that anymore. It was gone. I was aligned, and I could focus on other things that I wanted to focus on. And it just completely changed my life.
That's amazing. So you mentioned earlier that all of the feelings you suppressed came out, obviously, because you weren't, using alcohol to kind of dampen that. So how do you deal with all the emotions that suddenly come up?
Yeah, so that has been that's been really difficult. That's something I'm still working on. What I have been working on is kind of becoming mindful and trying to feel into my body, pay attention, become very self-aware, because what I have done is I'm still in survival mode, but I'm in the freeze mode. So I don't like feel anything. It's made me less compassionate. It's anything can happen. I can tell you about any of my traumatic experience in my life with just a straight face. I can't cry. I can't so I'm just in like this frozen survival mode. But what's helped me with that is somatic therapy. I'm a huge believer in somatic therapy. I have not been able to cry in a really long time, but last December, I don't even know how I came upon it, but I stumbled across this. I did this 15-minute somatic therapy exercise from YouTube, and I am not kidding you. The next morning, I get in my car. I'm just driving around. It's early in the morning, and this song comes on that reminds me of my divorce. And I started crying, and I'm like, and then I got so happy that I was crying that I stopped crying. But it's like somehow like released something inside of me. So I've been doing that, trying to release that. But then, and even a better thing that I've been doing too on top of that is working on my shadow work and my unconscious mind and my unconscious desires. I got big into law of attraction and manifestation. That's another thing that gave me a lot of hope, because no matter what I did, no matter how hard I worked, I just could not make more money. I could not move up financially at all. And I was like, I don't understand why. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll just manifest it. I'll raise my vibration. I'll do all these things and just manifest it. And I have not been able to do it. And then somebody turned me on to something called existential kink, which is where you learn to identify what your unconscious actually wants. And what I found through that is that I can't make money because my unconscious is protecting me from becoming wealthy, because I've always learned that, oh, people with money, they're selfish. People with money, they're stuck up, and I have all these unconscious thoughts that my mind is protecting me from moving up in that way. It does it through that for wealth. It does it in big time in relationships. And so I'm using these existential kink meditations to work through those unconscious desires. And that's where I'm at right now, actually.
Yeah, so go back to the somatic therapy. I'm not very familiar with that, and explain a little bit more about what that is.
Okay, so somatic therapy was actually, it came about in the 80s, and it was used to treat military veterans from PTSD. And they realized that these guys would come over from the war, and they had seen the worst of humanity. I mean, I can't even imagine what they've seen. And they're it was kind of the same thing as me, that you're in freeze. And so they could just easily talk to a therapist and be like, oh yeah, I saw this horrific thing happen, but it wasn't doing it. Talking about it was not doing anything. And so they would do these somatic exercises, and somatic exercises are kind of like yoga moves, but it's not for strength or flexibility. It's to release trauma. So you take it very, very slow, and you pay attention to how you feel when you're doing these movements, and it releases the trauma without having to talk about it or anything like that. It just somehow releases it.
Yeah, so basically, I think you focus on how your body is feeling, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, and that forces you to become more self-aware, and it forces you to pay attention to yourself and your own internal state, and then just kind of move for what feels good for you. And so it's very customized to your own self and your own needs.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some books that I need to read.
The body keeps the score. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's been on my to-read list for a while.
Yeah, I actually got certified in somatic EMDR therapy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I learned a lot, because that's how much that video changed me, because I couldn't believe it made me cry. And so that was in December, and then in February, I spent the money to go ahead and take this course, and just absolutely blown away by how helpful it's been.
So when you were growing up, did you cry, or was everything kind of suppressed from the beginning?
So it was suppressed from very early on. I was not allowed to have tantrums or anything like that, because mom was too busy, and so she really put me down, and tell me I was selfish, and tell me I had to take care of my sister. And at one time she even told me she was going to kill herself if I didn't stop stressing her out. And so so that really stuck with me, and I learned that, okay, I have to behave, I have to be right, I have to be ready to go, or else my mom's going to kill herself. That's extremely scary. So it did start, and I wasn't in school yet. I don't know, maybe 4, maybe 5. I can't really remember. It was really, really young, and she was just kind of like that throughout my life, in less dramatic ways, but still very, very mentally abusive, I guess. So I could still cry. I remember crying in high school, but that's when I started cutting myself, because I couldn't really feel anything already by that point.
Mm-hmm.
And so like cutting myself helped me just to kind of feel something and feel pain. It was almost like if I felt pain, then I was getting kind of what I deserved, basically.
Like a punishment.
Yeah. And then, as long as you're being punished, then you can go ahead and be happy after that. This is all coming out from this existential kink exercises. So I'm still kind of putting all this together.
Yeah, crying is such an interesting topic to me, because I talked with Tim about this. So Tim Nelson is, um, I also interviewed for the podcast, and we all know each other. But we came at it with the male side, because males and boys tend to be told don't cry, stuff all your feelings in. But I know for me growing up, I cried all the time. Like I cried over everything. That was my go-to response. If I was upset, I would cry. If I got hurt, if I would cry. If I got frustrated, I would cry. Like in school, like I didn't like my teachers to point out anything that I did, especially if I thought it was wrong. So I would get embarrassed, and my emotions would build up inside, and then they would just simply try to correct me, and then I would start crying. So I think a lot of that had to do because I grew up also in a very stressful environment as a child. So there's only so much that you can deal with before, it comes out. But I didn't turn to alcohol for it. I just became a certain age, I think by 30, I said to myself, Tina, you have to be able to deal with things without crying about them.
But I think crying is healthy. I mean, that is why you didn't have to turn to Amy, because when you're crying, you're getting your emotions out and you're feeling through it. I think when you do that, I mean, the times that I have cried, like I will cry at movies, like at happy movies. And after I do cry at movies, I just feel like so relaxed and it just better. Like I've gotten something out.
Yeah. So now I don't cry that much, but I always say that I got it all out of the way.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure everybody around me was relieved that Tina would stop crying about everything. But my emotions have always been really strong, and I couldn't stuff them in. And eventually they would just literally flow out of me with tears. And I know that made people uncomfortable, but this is the way I'm hardwired. Like I've always been this way.
Yeah. I came to you for a Reiki session, and one thing that stuck with me from that is you told me that my power would come from my emotions. And ever
Hmm.
since that session, I've been reading about emotions. I talk to Tim Nelson about it all the time, like because he is so in touch with his emotions, and I've been trying so hard. I've been trying everything to try to tap into that, because I agree with you. I think our emotions give us so much power. When we feel things, that's what drives us. And without that, I just feel so stuck.
And our emotions are part of being human and are directly connected to our compassion and our empathy and our soul level. The guidance that we're getting from our higher self is connected to emotion. So, um, there are people that don't have a lot of emotions, and I find those people are kind of scary.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, is there anything in there? Are you feeling anything? What's happening in there? You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, and it is scary. It's scary for people like me who don't. I mean, I'm definitely feeling more now, but before, I just, I mean, anything could happen, and well, I don't know how deep we want to get here, but my in 2021, my sister committed suicide, and I went to her apartment, and the cop came down the stairs, and he told me she shot herself, and I just stood there. I called my mom, which was awful. It was, as you can imagine, and still nothing. Like my ex-husband called. I was talking to him. He was like, "Do you need me to come get you? Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I got in my car and I drove. And to this day, I still have not cried about it.
Were you shocked?
I wasn't. Not really. She had been attempting suicide at least a few times a year, every year for probably 10 years. So
Wow.
yeah, it was. I knew one day it was probably going to happen. So I don't know.
Well, do you think that you've been preparing yourself for that for 10 years? I mean,
Yeah.
you can always prepare for what might happen, but that the idea of it wasn't brand new to
Mhm.
you because you kept trying to do it. That must have been so stressful.
It was, and it was so sad. Is another thing that made me hate alcohol so much because she would have never had the guts to shoot herself had she not been on a drinking binge for 3 days. And she was so out of it because we found video from her neighbors. She lived in an apartment building, and her neighbor had a Ring doorbell, and so we could see her. She was just so out of it. And I honestly believe if alcohol weren't legal, she would still be alive. Not only because it damaged her self-esteem and just damaged her mental health, but also because she would have never had the courage to actually
Yeah, on a spiritual level, alcohol and drug addiction brings out your dark side.
do it.
And it also energetically opens you up to being vulnerable in terms of your chakras and your energy centers of the body.
Mhm.
So and then on the physical level, it's just poison. I
Mhm.
mean, it's just you like you said, you would drink and the next morning you'd feel sick, like physically sick.
Oh yeah,
And then that would bring in all the emotional and mental challenges that go with it, right?
right.
When
Right.
you're physically sick, you're not at your best
Mhm.
and you can't handle life stresses as well. So
It,
yeah,
uh,
even if you are like a natural match to your spouse and one of you has a drug addiction or alcohol, it's going to bring out your dark side and you're going to struggle with everything.
yeah, I think it's because it brings out all that stuff that you buried down into your unconscious, and now it's all coming out. But it's not coming out in a any kind of organized or respectful manner. For me, it would just come out. And so, like when I was married, like I said, we would stuff everything down. We wouldn't deal with it. We were too busy, you know. So, but I would drink, and then it all come out in this just sloppy, horrible, mean way, and and it destroyed us. Alcohol destroys lives, and
Mhm,
to sit back knowing all this now and look around and see all these events on Facebook, all these commercials, all these things where all these companies are making billions of dollars by saying, oh, alcohol, yeah, it's like so much fun, we're gonna have such a great time, like especially the yoga and wine stuff, like we're gonna have such a good time, we're gonna connect with each other. How can that substance that causes men to abuse their wives and women to abuse their husbands, to do things they would never do sober, to get behind the wheel of a car and drive and murder people, to do all these horrible, to lead to drugs that you would never imagine yourself doing. How can that same substance be one that could help connect with your friends and help celebrate your marriage, help celebrate the birth of a baby? Like it's now that I can see things differently, it's wild to me just how normalized alcohol is in our society. And I would love nothing more than to awaken everyone, because I feel as a non-drinker that I get kind of isolated because I don't drink, because I don't get invited out. And when I do, it feels awkward because I'm not drinking. And in every event that I go to, it's going to have alcohol there. And, I want to do what I can to help us to stop that, because we don't need it. Not only do we not need it, but it's destroying all of us. It's destroying our relationships. We can't connect with one another. It's I think it's really devastating our society.
I mean, same. I mean, in my 40s, I would drink and it would give me headaches. Like my 40s were the decade of headaches and migraines. So I was like, I don't need this. I'm trying to avoid getting headaches, and I tended to get them really easily. So I started staying away from alcohol.
Mhm.
Um, and it also made me tired, which is like, I don't want to feel tired. I want to feel full of energy. You know
Mhm.
what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm not like completely sober like you. Like I'll have a drink or two, every month, maybe,
Mhm.
if I feel like it. But once you stop drinking, you notice how much everybody else is
Yeah,
drinking.
exactly.
And I would scroll through Facebook and it'd be like, oh, it's Wine Down Friday.
Mhm.
It's t-shirts with um I'm I'm a wine mommy or whatever stupid saying they have. And it's really disturbing and ridiculous how everybody thinks alcohol is so great. Well, guess what? It's not.
It's not.
It's the opposite.
Mhm. And one of my
And then
favorite things.
I've tried to I confronted a friend. I thought that she had a drinking problem and she stopped talking to me.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I knew she would that's a possibility, but I thought it was important enough and obvious enough that I had to say something
Mhm.
about it.
People do not like it, and that's why I was excited to talk to you today, because I can finally openly talk about sobriety and how great it is, because nobody wants to hear about it at all. Um, and which is another way that I kind of feel isolated. But also, one of my favorite things to do when I'm, like we were talking about, scrolling through Facebook and seeing these events and these t-shirts and stuff, is I will replace alcohol with the word cocaine, because
Mhm.
what's the difference? It is a substance. The only difference is that cocaine is illegal. Literally, that's it. Alcohol kills more people per year by far than cocaine, which partly is because it is legal.
Mhm.
So anyway, so when I see these, like, I don't know, wind down Wednesdays or whatever, and I just think, what if that was cocaine? And it just makes me laugh, and it helps to keep my unconscious mind from desiring it again. Because that's so I've gone back to drinking before, because those same subliminal messages will creep back into my unconscious mind, and before I know it, now I want to drink, because I'm watching Desperate Housewives, and all the wives are together, and it's sunny, and they're drinking their white wine, and everybody's laughing, and my unconscious mind can't filter that out. So I have to constantly stop and say, okay, yeah, they look like they're having a great time, but it's a show. You're not going to see the things that they say to their spouses after. You're not going to see them falling down, stumbling around. You're certainly not going to see their hangovers. And so I have to consciously stop and tell myself that, so that my unconscious mind doesn't pick up on all these messages, all these people posting on Facebook about how great of a time they're having, and it creeps right back in, and puts me right back in the same cycle. So that's another
Yeah,
thing about staying sober, is really having control over what you're seeing and what you're allowing in.
right. And it requires discipline,
Mhm.
especially in our culture that's so pro alcohol all the time. Like even in Charleston, they have all these alcohol focused festivals. Like someone invited me to the Mimosa Festival, and I was like, I really don't want to be around people drinking and drunk.
Mhm. I don't need that.
That's not my idea of having a good time.
Mhm.
To see everybody compromised
Yeah.
and not being their true selves and denying things and pretending. I don't know. It's like major fakery to me.
Yeah. Yeah, because you can't truly feel somebody's energy. You can't truly feel whether or not you are an energetic match for those people. That was another mind-blowing thing that happened to me, is I had been drinking with these same people for years and years, going to the same bars and the same people. And I thought I loved these people, and that these people love me. And then I got sober, and I would still go out, and I'd see these people, and I'm like, I don't even like this person. Like, and I had spent so much time thinking that we had this connection, but we were just both numb, just talking without feeling each other, without actually connecting with each other. So that was very eye-opening too, to see
Yeah.
who I truly connect with and who I truly vibe with and who I don't.
You just see life a lot clearly when you're sober, when you avoid these type of things.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so we have a long way to go culturally.
Mhm.
But it's wonderful that you found all these methods that helped you. And this is why I love books, because I feel like books are my greatest teachers.
Mhm.
I'm
Absolutely.
always reading, I'm always learning.
Mhm.
I talked with a yogi recently, and he said he doesn't read any books. He just goes within and he talks with his, physical teachers. I'm like, that's not enough, because to me, you need different viewpoints.
Mhm.
You're not going to agree with everything that you read,
Right.
right?
Right.
But you're going to take what resonates with you and practice or try that. And if it doesn't work, you try something else. But I
Exactly.
feel like reading is just such a great gift. I mean, there's so much good information out there. In
Mhm.
addition, podcasting too,
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
because podcasts, a lot of the stuff on the internet is suppressed
Mhm.
and manipulated by algorithms.
Mhm.
But on podcasting, I mean, the topics that people are talking about is amazing, which is the reason why I started Voices of Healing, so that I could start talking with healing practitioners, or even people like you that just figured out how to overcome a really big problem in their lives.
Yeah, I mean, and I use books. I didn't have, I wasn't raised by parents that could really teach me much of anything. And so yeah, I've relied on books my entire life. And yeah, just like you said, I would read a book and I'd be like, okay, this fits, this resonates, and maybe this not so much. I'm not relying on these authors to tell me how to live, but I am finding inspiration here or there, or finding what feels right for me. And without books, I honestly, I don't know where I'd be. They've taught
Yeah,
me much.
me too. I mean, I don't have, even on a spiritual level, there's not a lot of teachers in
No.
this area, not on the East Coast. I feel like there's a lot more on the West Coast.
Mhm.
Uh, but what if you can't find the teacher, or
Right.
you can't travel to a class?
Mhm.
That's why books are so wonderful.
Yeah, and podcasts, like you said too. Another thing that I did while I was trying to heal myself, which I still do, which I did this morning, was while I'm working out, I will listen to my favorite person is Eddie Pinero. And so while I'm working out, I'll have him on, like his YouTube videos on. And so even if I'm not paying attention 100%, my subconscious, my unconscious is still soaking up that information. And so that's how I start my day. I'm working out, I'm listening to Eddie Pinero. He's telling me, all these wonderful things and making me feel good, and I'm pumped. And that's the energy that I can bring into my day every single day.
Yeah. So what if there's a listener out there that thinks that they might have a problem with alcohol, or they know somebody that they love has a problem with alcohol? Where do they even begin to start addressing that?
So a lot of people have asked me, like, what's an alcoholic, or what do you consider to be a problem? And for me, in my opinion, because there's a lot of research out there, there's conflicting theories. For me, if you tell yourself, I'm not going to drink tonight, and you drink, or you tell yourself you're going to go out and have 3 drinks and you have 18 drinks, if alcohol is out of your control now, then you are at least emotionally addicted to it. And that is when you should start addressing that problem. If you're using alcohol as a tool to do anything other than maybe get that first dopamine hit, if you're using it because you don't have enough confidence to go be around your friends, if you're using it because you can't do stress without it, you have a problem, and you need to start really looking into it. And so my first tip would be just start recognizing it. Just start being like, okay, wow, I made this promise to myself. I broke that promise to myself. Okay, notice that. Then when you start drinking, just start noticing. Just be mindful when you're drinking. How do I actually feel? How do I feel after 2 drinks? And really start paying attention to whether or not that belief that you hold is true or not. And when you find, because you will find that you're using alcohol to fix something inside of yourself, that's where you know to go inside yourself and dig deep, because you have a problem there. And there's other tools and there's other ways that will actually fix that problem rather than just putting this loose band-aid on it that's not even going to help. So,
Yeah.
so self-awareness first and foremost, and then also pay attention to where these problems are, because you need to address those. And then go from there, adding in whatever tools will help you. For me, like I said, it was meditation, going to the gym, and journaling. But there's tons of other ways. People are doing all kinds of different things. So find what's right for you. And then as far as your loved ones, that's tough. That's really, really tough. I honestly, I think the only way to get to them is you have to wait until they're ready, because until somebody is ready, they are going to be defensive and they are going to defend their habits harder than ever. And it is, I'm going through that with a couple people that I love deeply, and I'm watching them spiral out. I'm watching them lose everything that they have. And all I can do is my best to do my best for myself and show them how I'm living and show them there's a better way. But I cannot help them or change their minds until they come to me and ask me for my help, because they realize they have a problem.
Yeah. Same with me. I have a family member I'm pretty sure has a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't said anything, but what do you do? Sometimes when you say something, they shut you out and shut you down, cut you out of their lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I am dealing with that right now, and I went to that person and I was like, you're losing your business. You have almost no relationship with your children. You have all these things going on. I just want to make sure that you're aware of these things, and I want to let you know that I love you and that I am here for you, and you're not alone. And all I can do is love him with everything that I have got. And honestly, if there's more, I would love to know. But I just know myself, and I knew I wasn't ready to hear it until I was ready.
Yeah.
It
really comes down to that. I mean, you can just tell them, I've been through this, or I'm aware of this, and whenever you need help, I'll be here for you. And you know what? Sometimes they never come to you for help.
Yeah.
And that's reality.
I think that unraveling our unconscious traumas, I guess, maybe somatic therapy. So maybe if you see somebody going through this, suggesting somatic therapy might be something, because then they are releasing their traumas without even knowing it. And so when you are releasing those traumas, maybe you won't want to grab that wine every single day. I might try that with this person. But yeah, I think it starts with, I think the root of the problem is these unconscious, our shadow selves that we don't even know is there, that's destroying our lives. It's the reason why we look at we look at a scale, we're 40 pounds overweight, and we go and eat a box of cookies. That's our unconscious, that's our shadow. Our conscious mind knows, if I eat that box of cookies, I'm just going to gain more weight. So I think the answer to everything, honestly, is our shadow work and healing our unconscious.
And it's really being honest with yourself, observing how you're feeling as a result, and also just look at the people around you that are drinking.
Mm-hmm.
Observe how they're behaving after one or two or three drinks.
Mm-hmm.
Is it changing their personality for the better, for the worse? Is this healthy? And start asking questions and observe around you what's happening.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like, do you want to look like that? I have a friend who's a bartender, and she has recently quit drinking with this naked mind as well. And I'm like, is it hard for you to work at a bar and be sober? And she was like, absolutely not. She like, I see what these people look like, what they're saying, and I don't want to be like that at all. It's crazy how we think, oh, I look better when I'm drinking, and I feel so much more confident, and I feel like my conversations flow better. You might think that in your mind, but videotape yourself and watch it, and then see, like, do you look better? Are your conversations flowing better? Probably not. That's a huge
And
reason.
then their body is unhappy with you
Mhm.
too.
Oh yeah.
So, well, in the end, we're running out of time, so we just have a few minutes. But I want to just mention that there is hope. There are ways to overcome alcoholism. Denise is a wonderful example of that. And try the things that she suggested, and find professionals to help you.
Mhm.
There are professionals, that are certified in EDMR, like Denise, or somatic therapy, or, even Reiki could help. Um, or learning how to do these things so that you can relax on your own. So you learn how to relax without turning to alcohol. So in the end, do you have any other thoughts you want to share, Denise?
I just, I would highly, highly recommend, if you feel like you don't have control over alcohol anymore, to read that book, The Snake in Mind by Annie Grace. I I honestly don't think I could have quit drinking if it weren't for that. So I just want to stress that one more time. And that's it. I want to encourage anybody to reach out to me at any time if you need. I have all the tips and tricks because I have been going through this, studying it for years now. So I'm always here for anybody who needs it.
Thank you so much for doing this. I know you were a little nervous about coming on and talking about it, but I really appreciate that you came on the show and talked about your personal experience. And this is how we're going to help each other. And we need to be open and honest with everyone, and share what's worked for us. And that was the whole point of doing this podcast, so people can have information and options and hope.
Mhm.
There are
Yeah,
solutions out there.
absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show, Denise. And I will have her contact information in the notes if anybody wants to reach out to her.
Thank you.